What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. My channel name is College Football Frenzy, back here with another video, and today I'm going to be ranking the best matchups of Week 3 of the 2020 college football season. I've done one for Week 1 and for Week 2. Now Week 3. I'm interested in this Week 3. I think it's a very top-heavy week. It's got a lot of weak matchups overall, but it does have probably the best matchup of the regular season in college football in 2020, so that's good. But overall, I feel like it's a more top-heavy week. It doesn't have as many competitive matchups, in my opinion, as Week 2 or even as Week 1. A lot of teams, especially in the Big Ten, the Pac-12, are finishing up their out-of-conference schedules, so they're scheduling a cupcake right before out-of-conference play. So it's, it has a lot of cupcake games, but there are a few games that are decent, including one extremely good game, which, in my opinion, the best game in the 2020 regular season. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it. Again, I'm not going to break down every, new player a team has or stuff like that. It's just going to be why I like the matchup, kind of, that kind of stuff. Number 10, BYU versus Arizona State. Like I said, not too many fantastic matchups on here. I definitely think Arizona State's the better football team overall, led by a great head coach in Herm Edwards. They could have very well, if they didn't have that tough midseason stretch, they could have very well been 9-3 or 10-2 this past season. They had some good wins overall, including beating Oregon and beating Florida State in their bowl game. So they were a good team. They're led by a great head coach. They have a great young quarterback. So they should be good next year, and it's a home game for ASU. Tough place to play out. BYU, I think BYU definitely can compete with some of the bigger teams. We saw it. They beat Boise State last year. That's the rival, so that was a big win for them. So they definitely can compete. That being said, I definitely favor Arizona State, but again, I wouldn't be shocked if BYU were to win. 9, James Madison versus North Carolina. North Carolina has a very tough out-of-conference schedule, in my opinion. It's flying under the radar, but they have a tough out-of-conference schedule. I had them in the top 10 matchups in my Week 1 and Week 2 top 10 matchups rankings. They play in Week 1 UCF. I think that's a great matchup. In Week 2, they play Auburn. That's a great matchup. And they play in Week 3 James Madison. If you don't know who James Madison is, it's an FCS school. But that FCS school also went to the national championship last year and only lost by 7 to North Dakota State, who went 16-0. So they were a pretty good football team last year, James Madison. Of course, especially on the offense, North Carolina is clearly better. They have a better head coach overall, no doubt. Sam Howell is a great player. It's a home game for North Carolina. So, of course, I'm going with North Carolina in this one. But they can't sleep on James Madison, and they might be banged up, North Carolina, after playing 2 tough games against UCF and Auburn. So James Madison can definitely make it a little bit interesting in this game. So I have it at 9. 8, Air Force and Purdue. So I believe I have Purdue in my Week 1 top 10 matchups and my Week 2 top 10 matchups, and I had Air Force in one of my Week 2 top 10 matchups as well. So these two schools, I think, have a lot of tough out-of-conference matchups as well as some tough in-conference matchups. So this will definitely be a big game for these two schools. I think especially for Air Force, they have a really tough schedule overall, and it's going to be tough to make a good bowl game with that schedule. So this is a big game for Air Force and even for Purdue. I expect, Purdue at home to have the advantage. It's a tough place to play, but, I wouldn't be shocked if Air Force were to win. But then again, they lost a lot of talent, a lot of talent left the Air Force this past season, and the recruiting class is not fantastic. So that's something going to hurt Air Force overall, but it definitely should be an entertaining matchup. And again, Air Force won their bowl game against Washington State, finished in the top 25 with only 2 losses, and one of those came to Boise State. So they were a good football team last year. So this is my number 8 matchup. 7, Missouri versus South Carolina. Both these teams really need this victory. It's a huge SEC East matchup. The winner, good chance they're going bowl game. The loser of this game, pretty good chance they're not going bowling. I understand it's early in the season, but it's a big matchup. There won't be too many other opportunities for these teams to get big SEC wins. This is one of them. I definitely favor South Carolina because they're at home. They have better talent, and Will Muschamp, despite not being a great head coach and being on the hot seat right now, I trust him more than Eli Drinkwitz, who I understand 13-1 at App State. That's great, but we don't know too much about him at the Power 5 level. So I would favor South Carolina, but again, Missouri can definitely make this an entertaining game, but it's a big matchup for these schools. 6, USC versus Stanford. So these two schools for this upcoming season have pretty tough schedules. Stanford had like one of the top 10 hour schedules in all of college football last year, and for this upcoming season, USC probably has one of the hardest, if not in my opinion, possibly the hardest schedule in all of college football this season. They both have to play Oregon, they both have to play Notre Dame, they both have to play, I believe, Washington, and there's some other opponents they have to play. USC has Alabama. So these two schools, they're going to need to get all the wins they can. It's a home game for Stanford. I think USC is clearly the more talented team led by Kenan Slovis. But, Stanford's at home. They can definitely put up a fight. So I have this game currently at 6. It should be interesting to see. But both these schools need this. I feel like USC is not going to perform very well against the schools like Oregon or Notre Dame or Alabama. I think people might be overhyping them too much in those games. So it's a big game for USC in my opinion. 5, App State versus Wisconsin. Like I was saying earlier, Eli Drinkwitz did pretty good with App State last year, but he has since left. That's definitely going to hurt. Wisconsin, they just lost Jonathan Taylor, clearly their best player, Doak Walker Award winner, so losing him is definitely going to hurt. I think the offense for Wisconsin is not going to be very great. I don't trust Jack Cohen or the weapons they have too much. That being said, they have a top 5 defense, so that makes up for it. So it should be an interesting matchup overall. I definitely favor Wisconsin. It's at Camp Randall. They're the more talented team. But App State, you got to admit, they were a top 20 team last year. They went 13-1, and they beat South Carolina, and they beat North Carolina, so they can beat Power 5 teams. So I'm just saying, don't count these teams out. Don't count them out yet, these group of 5 schools. So I have this at 5. For Auburn versus Ole Miss, this is a pretty good matchup in my opinion. You have Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I think he should do decent there. Again, he's a new head coach. It might hurt him that the coronavirus is happening like all other new head coaches because he's not going to be used to the team. But overall, Ole Miss is a pretty good recruiting class. The experienced talent's okay, not great. But the recruiting class is good. I trust that Lane Kiffin will do at least decent at Ole Miss. I think he'll bring them to bowl eligibility again. And it's a home game for the Rebels. So, they definitely can give Auburn a challenge. I mean, they definitely can. Last year, Ole Miss nearly beat Auburn, actually, in Auburn. So it's not a guarantee for Auburn. Of course, Auburn has the more talented team, and Gus Malzahn's still a decent head coach. They're not losing much Auburn at all, really. Most of their production's returning. Besides Derek Brown, they're not losing much. So Auburn's definitely, in my opinion, the more experienced team. But don't underestimate Ole Miss. They can definitely put up a fight. 3, Iowa versus Minnesota. Big game. Iowa was the first team to hand Minnesota a loss last year. That really hurt Minnesota's playoff hopes. That was a big loss, and it was only a 4-point game. If Minnesota was to win that game, they would have gone to the Big Ten championship, and who knows, maybe they make the Rose Bowl or something like that. So that was a big win for Iowa last year, home in Kinnick in November. For this upcoming season, Iowa's losing a lot, and it's not going to be a home game. Obviously, Tristan Wirfs is gone. That's a big loss. There's AJ Espinosa on the defense, he's gone. Nate Stanley's gone. That being said, they still have a pretty good head coach, and I'm not going to count them out yet. Lately, they've just been competitive in the Big Ten. They know how to find a way to win games, so I'm not going to count them out and say that they can't be a ranked team next year. Iowa has Iowa State the week before that, so they have a couple big matchups even before this game. As for Minnesota, they aren't losing too much. Rashad Bateman's coming back. Terry Morgan's coming back at quarterback. PJ Fleck's a pretty good head coach, so I definitely think Minnesota at home has the upper hand, but don't count out Iowa. They're definitely a good football team. This is really a big Big Ten West matchup, but I would definitely favor Minnesota. 2, Florida State, Boise State. You guys were definitely expecting this. Mike Norvell gets a big test here. He already has to face West Virginia in week 1, but this is a big matchup for these two schools. Last year, Florida State reincarnated the choke at the Doak. However, this time around, they lost. They were on the losing end. If you don't know what I mean, the choke at the Doak, it was when Florida choked against Florida State. But last year, Florida State was on the choking side. They choked against Boise State. They had a big lead, and it looked like they were doing pretty good. Boise State was, I think, still in the top 25 at that point in week 1, and they let Boise State come back. Boise State ended up winning the game. That was a big choke by Florida State. They really should have won that game. For this upcoming season, Boise State's a lot of returning production. I believe Hank Bachmeier is the quarterback right now. I think he's going to be a sophomore, so he'll be a little bit more experienced. But overall, Boise State's always going to be a problem for a lot of Power 5 schools, and it's a home game for the Broncos, so expect a tough test for Florida State. That being said, Mike Norvell's still a great head coach, came from Memphis, a program that was the best Group of 5 program last year. So, Memphis was great last year. We'll see how Mike Norvell does at Florida State. They have a tough schedule, and this is definitely one of their toughest games overall. So we'll see how it goes. But again, at Boise, tough place to play. But overall, it still should be a decent game overall. 1. Was anybody expecting anything different? I want to ask you that. I hope none of you are expecting anything different from Georgia versus Alabama, because this is clearly, in my opinion, the best game of the 2020 regular season. It's always a treat when we get to see Georgia versus Alabama. Obviously, Georgia versus Alabama, the last few years have played each other a couple times. Obviously, in the 2018 SEC Championship game, and the year before that, they played each other in the 2018 National Championship game. That was the 2017 season, obviously. So, those games, they were both great games. Alabama managed to come back in both of those and win in crazy fashion. Both great games. So Georgia's going to be wanting revenge, no doubt. These are the 2 highest-ranked teams in the SEC for 2020. They're very talented football teams. I think according to 24/7 Sports, they have the number 1 and number 2 recruiting classes in the nation. So that they both look good talent-wise, especially with young talent. And returning talent, they're pretty good overall. The defense for Georgia should be great. The offense for Alabama, you're returning a lot of weapons. Najee Harris coming back at running back. So Alabama looks stacked on offense, Georgia on defense. But even on the defense, Alabama looks like they could definitely improve. And Georgia on the offense, Jamie Newman, we'll see how he does. We can't rule him out yet that he's not going to be as good as Jake Fromm. I think he will be better than Jake Fromm, to be honest. So it's a big game. It's a very big game. The winner of this is going to have an easy time, in my opinion, going on to the SEC Championship game. Of course, they both have to deal with the division rival. Georgia has to deal with Florida, and Alabama has to deal with LSU. But still, I think these two teams could very well meet up in the SEC Championship again, and they could both make the playoff. It's a huge matchup in Tuscaloosa. Everybody's looking forward to this, no doubt. It's a treat to have this very early on. I think the last time they faced off in the regular season was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. I think Alabama won that at Stanford Stadium. I'm pretty sure. But overall, it's just a huge matchup. I'm very excited for this one. 2 very talented teams, the cream of the crop in the SEC the last few years. I'm excited. But overall, guys, that is it for now. Thank you for joining in. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Leave your top 10 games of Week 3 down below. And that is it for now. Thank you for joining in.